Hi, everybody. The begins when the melody of a music box accompanied the gentle spinning of a tiny ballerina. In front of her, a blood-covered little girl gazed fixedly, absorbed in its sway. Her eyes were windows to moving memories with her father, his voice telling her she danced beautifully, noting her rapid growth and assuring her that despite current imperfection, she would achieve mastery. He also commented on her striking resemblance to her sister, a face already blurred in her childlike memory. In that bittersweet atmosphere, her father playfully warned her if he returned and found her too grown, she'd be in trouble. At that instant, a tattoo on the father was revealed, etched with the legend, "Conquer who conquers himself." The intruders silenced the guard and raided the dwelling. Barely conscious of the danger, the father reacted swiftly. He confronted them one by one, even throwing a smoke grenade to sow confusion. His attackers were not willing to let him escape, but he cunningly set a trap and fled in search of his daughter. With a firm voice, he reminded her of their joint practices. Little Eve, terrified, watched her father's brave resistance. He guided her to a hidden door, remaining calm to hide her safely. Then he returned to face the end of the fight. He fell fighting hand to hand, taking down enemies until his last breath. Meanwhile, Eve spied from her hiding place, her eyes wide with fear, feeling useless. But there were too many. His skill was not enough to hold back the tide. He reminded him of the warm welcome they had given him, the permission to marry one of their daughters. However, he accused him of betrayal, of taking something that didn't belong to him. And now, because of his actions, his wife lay dead, and they had come for Eve. With an unsettling calm, he loaded a bullet into his gun and sentenced in a low, cold voice. A bullet is neither good nor bad. But when a man pulls the trigger, you see who he really is. Just as the father seemed about to make the supreme decision, a small voice tore through the tension. Eve couldn't hold back anymore. As she came out of her hiding place, the attackers instantly discovered her. Her father reacted without hesitation, shooting them and taking down several, but one of the men tackled him and pinned him down. The instant he was about to be finished off, Eve spotted a nearby weapon. Without hesitating, she grabbed it, aimed with trembling hands, and fired. She saved him just in time. In tears, she ran to him, helped him up, and gently wiped the blood from his face. Together they fled precipitously through the secret exit. Before disappearing, he activated a timed explosive. They barely managed to get to safety before the detonation shook the house. The Chancellor, who was outside, survived the explosion and contemplated the flames in silence. Her father, life ebbing away, begged for forgiveness in a voice broken by pain. He collapsed and died before her eyes. Back in the present, Winston Scott, now a manager, introduced himself to her. He approached respectfully and without sugarcoating, told her frankly. There was no easy comfort for the pain that engulfed her, but his duty was to be honest. He assured her that her father had been a good man, someone who yearned for a better existence for her, far from the world he had known. He admitted having investigated what happened and confirmed that her father had been unjustly taken from her. That's why he was there to offer to take her to her paternal family. Perhaps, just perhaps someday they too could become her family. Eve, with nowhere else to go, uttered no word, just nodded slightly and extended her hand. That silent gesture, simple yet full of meaning, sealed her fate. Shortly after, she was seen preparing to meet the leader of her new home. Meanwhile, Winston had a discreet conversation with Nogi, the Rusa Roma's instructor. He revealed that the young woman still didn't know her parents' true identity. When the director greeted Eve, her voice conveyed a mixture of strength and kindness. She asked if she knew how to dance. Receiving an affirmative answer, the woman confessed that she understood her pain, that she felt the fire burning inside her. She offered to help her channel that rage, arguing that those who destroyed her past should not also steal her future. Later, Eve said goodbye to Winston Scott with sincere gratitude, to which he responded with an unequivocal promise. He would always be there for her, no matter the time or circumstance. It was then that Eve met Nogi, her new instructor in the Roma, a secret and high-risk institution to which her father had belonged. He had been a Kikimura. In mythology, a Kikimura is a spirit that inhabits those marked by darkness in their hearts, capable of being a vengeful force or a guardian of the innocent, two sides of the same coin to kill or to protect. And now that choice fell upon Eve. From that moment on, Eve dedicated herself to ballet with painful determination. Every movement was a battle against herself, an internal war that never led her to surrender. Year after year she trained tirelessly in a place where grace and brutality danced in a macabre harmony. One day, the director stopped her. Her feet were bleeding from the extreme effort. The director told her to call Tatiana as it was her turn. Eve nodded and left. As she walked towards Tatiana, a detail caught her eye. Eve had a tattoo, the same phrase her father had etched on his skin. Tatiana, seeing it, suggested she heal her wounds, slow down. She was already the best dancer there. But Eve didn't crave applause. She sought something deeper. She longed to become a Kikimura. Thus began a new chapter in her life. Her training intensified. She learned weapon handling, the art of moving in the shadows, the precision of combat. And the coldness needed to kill slowly but surely. Eve left the girl behind to forge a legend within the Roma. One of the crucial tests was simple in its statement: protect the assigned person, no matter the consequences. That was the only inviolable rule. Eve participated in these exercises, but despite her effort, failure recurrent. Her instructor Noi offered no easy comfort. She told her bluntly that her opponent won because she allowed it. She sternly reminded her, don't give up. You have to improvise, adapt, overcome them. Don't fight by their rules, fight by yours. Use your advantage. Fight as what you really are, a girl with fire in her heart. Driven by these words, Eve tried one more time, and this time she succeeded. She overcame each and every challenge. One day while looking for Tatiana, she found her belongings missing. Without hesitation, she burst into the director's office looking for answers. The woman remained unperturbed. She informed her directly. Tatiana was no longer part of the Roma. She lacked what was necessary. She lacked the killer instinct that Eve possessed. Tatiana had felt sadness but not true pain. Now their paths had separated. Immediately the director told her, it's time. Eve is ready. She had reached the final stage of her training. They led her to a room where another young woman waited, someone who had also dedicated 10 years to constant training. The test was simple but brutal: assemble a weapon, load a bullet, and pull the trigger. Eve did not hesitate. She did it cleanly, precisely, without ulterior motives, just as in the instant she saved her father. The same test, but this time she was the one shooting. The scene shifted to a young John Wick, being sealed by the Roma director as a protected member. A mark was etched on his back as she pronounced, "Once this is done, there's no going home." Eve watched the ritual in silence. As John Wick walked away, Eve caught up to him, her face reflecting curiosity and innocence. She asked him if he was truly the legendary Baba Yaga. Sometime later, Eve received her first real mission. She was assigned to protect a young woman, the daughter of a powerful ally of the organization. There was fear of a possible kidnapping. The magnitude of the task was immense. That girl's life now rested in Eve's hands. She was given a reinforced Glock 43X and sent to locate her target. The next scene unfolded at a high society party. Eve identified her protected almost instantly, and as feared, danger soon manifested itself. A team of trained men moved to abduct the young woman. Eve reacted immediately, but at first she was overwhelmed. Her adversaries were not amateurs. They had also been trained and fought fiercely. However, Eve adapted. She changed her strategy. One by one, she began to take them down. Just when it seemed like it was all over, the strongest of the group was already taking the girl away. Without losing a second, Eve ran after him. She saw a hammer, took it, and attacked without hesitation. She hit him repeatedly, driven by rage until he fell. She rescued the young woman. Mission accomplished. Later, she was seen receiving a new tattoo as the director watched her proudly. She was no longer a student. She was a Kikimura. Years passed. Now we see Eve completing another mission cleanly and perfectly. Inside a bathroom, she bandaged her wounds with glacial concentration. She sent proof that the work was done. Seconds later, her phone vibrated. Payment received $750,000. With the task completed, Eve calmly drove away in a BMW M4 F80, but her peace abruptly vanished. Suddenly, another car violently crashed into hers. Without time to react, she got out and precisely took down the aggressor. However, upon examining the body, a shiver ran through her, a mark on his hand, a cross, the same symbol carried by the men who murdered her father. Without hesitation, she amputated the man's hand and took it directly to the Rosa Roma director. She demanded answers about that symbol. The director, her eyes shadowed by a dark gaze, revealed, "Those who bear that mark obey no rules. They are part of a pact older than the Rosa Roma itself, and no one, absolutely no one, dares to defy them. They are savages shrouded in mystery." Eve made a decision. She would go to the Continental. She entered and demanded to speak with the manager, Winston Scott. She introduced herself firmly. Eve McCarroll. She had come to see the man who years ago had saved her life and placed her under the protection of the Rosa Roma. She confessed that she was tracking the group responsible for her father's death. The director had warned her, "They are dangerous," but she didn't care. She was ready to face them. Winston looked her squarely in the eyes and stated, "The need to know is what cast us out of Eden." But Eve was unfazed. She responded resolutely. "Then I am ready to be cast out," and placed a coin on the table, one of the highest value tokens in the assassin world. Winston watched her, astonished. Finally, he revealed, "Those marked with a cross are not a clan. They are a cult, an ancient order with no face or homeland, and one of them, a man named Daniel Pine, is staying at one of your network hotels in Prague." Winston Scott made a call for more information. The answer came quickly. Daniel Pine had a $2 million bounty on his head and was staying in room 315 of the Continental Hotel in Prague. Just as he was handed a copy of the key, the director called, knowing that nothing would stop Eve now. She simply wished her good luck. Upon arriving at the Prague Continental, Eve checked into room 314 discreetly without drawing attention. She slipped into position. She wasn't the only one after Daniel Pine, and soon others discovered someone had already broken into his room. That someone was Eve McCarroll. She opened the door and found a child inside, Ella, Daniel's daughter. In her eyes, Eve saw a reflection of her own childhood. It was then that Daniel appeared. Eve wasted no time. She precisely explained the reason for her presence. Years ago, someone with his mark had murdered her father, but just at that moment, a storm broke. Lena, a powerful woman also staying at the Continental, raised the bounty on Daniel Pine to $4 million. The news spread like wild fire. Now everyone was looking for him breathlessly. Daniel confessed the real reason they wanted him dead was to get to his daughter Ella. Suddenly they were attacked. A horde of assassins descended upon them. Eve fought with lethal precision, resisting as Daniel took Ella and fled, but Lena, she already knew everything. When they finally reunited, Daniel told Eve, "No one gets out of the cult alive. It's an eternal bond. But if Eve helps me protect Ella, I'll tell her where to find the rest." He knelt, said goodbye to his daughter, and asked her to trust Eve. The two tried to escape on their own, but history repeated itself with cruel irony. Moments later, Daniel was killed right in front of Ella. Eve witnessed the horror, but before she could react, she was knocked unconscious. When she woke up, Ella was gone. Meanwhile, Lena informed the Chancellor. She told him there was a woman, someone who wasn't looking for the bounty, but specifically for Ella. They didn't know her identity. So for the moment they had left her under the protection of the Continental. Eve tried to defend herself. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't break the rules. The judgment was clear. Eve would not be eliminated. The others had attacked first. That was their responsibility, but there was a condition. She had to vacate the room without losing an instant. Eve went directly to a weapons dealer. She requested to see the private collection just as the arsenal was exposed. An assault squad burst in to eliminate her. She had no other choice. She wielded the best weapons from the display and removed the pin from a grenade. The explosion covered her retreat, but there were still more enemies, so she threw another, and to be sure, one more. Boom! When the smoke cleared, silence reigned. She went back inside. Fortunately, the owner of the place had survived. As a sign of gratitude, the armorer offered her something more valuable than weapons. He revealed that the exact location of the Colt had never been confirmed. All those who had ventured in search of it never returned. However, a persistent rumor circulated. They gathered in the mountains where the border between myth and death blurred as she drove along a winding mountain road. The phone rang. It was the director. Her tone harsh and cold. She already knew Eve had broken the rules. She demanded that she return immediately, warning her, if you continue, you will no longer have a choice. But Eve with unwavering serenity ended the call without hesitation as she passed through a small quiet town. Something caught her attention, a shop window inside a music box identical to the one from her childhood. Drawn by a strange mix of nostalgia and instinct, she entered, simply asking for a coffee. But the atmosphere of the place was strange and oppressive silence. Something wasn't right at that moment. A man of imposing proportions made his appearance. The man was a beast, relentless in his attack. However, Eve managed to fracture his arm, and just as he hesitated, she shot. He fell dead. There was no time to breathe. Eve ran, but just as she crossed the threshold to escape, the waitress blocked her way, a knife glinting in her hand. She tried to surprise her, but Eve's reflexes, perfected over years in the Rusk aroma, acted with astonishing speed. She disarmed the woman in seconds, locked her in a back room, and continued her escape. There was no respite. More attackers appeared, determined to finish her off. The shop transformed into a war zone. Hand-to-hand combat. One by one, Eve eliminated them with lethal precision. Wounded but alive, she escaped through a narrow alley. From a distance, a sniper observed the scene. The Chancellor's eye. He sent the report. The intruder was still alive. Eve's journey continued, but now something was different. The whole town felt threatening. Without warning, for no apparent reason, everyone rushed at her, men, women, elders, all trying to kill her. Exhausted, bleeding, she kept fighting with every ounce of strength, following every instinct. But it wasn't enough, not this time. They overpowered her, cornered her, and then Lena appeared. She said nothing, simply slid down Eve's collar and examined the tattoo on her back. When Eve regained consciousness, she found herself a prisoner, chained and defenseless. It was at that moment that Lena intervened. Lena addressed the Chancellor and confirmed his suspicions. Eve was part of the Rusk aroma. The Chancellor was unfazed. He admitted that years ago he had met the head of the house and a tacit agreement had been forged between them, a delicate balance of powers where each side played its necessary role. The Chancellor stepped aside and spoke privately with Lena. Finally, he revealed the truth that had remained hidden for so long. Eve had not come on orders or for a reward. She had come because years ago they had murdered her father, which meant Eve was his daughter. Eve and Lena were sisters. The revelation hit Lena like a brutal blow. Just then a shootout erupted. Eve had freed herself. She was escaping. Lena pursued her, finally cornering her face to face. Lena breathed with difficulty and confessed, "My whole life I thought you were dead." Discovering that she had been raised outside away from the cult shook Lena to her core. Lena explained that their father believed he could redeem himself by raising a daughter well, that perhaps that way he could undo his mistakes, but that was an illusion. It was never going to happen. Eve didn't see it that way. Her father had tried to protect her, and then the Rusk Roma had given her something he had never had a choice, and she had taken it. But now the past had caught up to her. She no longer sought truth or justice. Now she only longed for revenge. Everyone's gaze converged on the two sisters. The Chancellor did not hesitate. He gave the order. Eliminate them. Immediately grenades were launched. The explosion seriously wounded both young women, especially Lena. With her last breath, Eve crawled towards her sister. Lena looked at her and whispered a heartbreaking truth. "I was only 9 years old when they told me you had died, and I missed you every day." Then her life extinguished. Her death ignited an unprecedented fury in Eve. When the soldiers arrived looking for survivors, Eve stood up and massacred each and every one of them without mercy, without hesitation, only revenge. Afterward, Eve took a radio and spoke directly to the Chancellor. Her voice was icy, unyielding. "This won't end until you're dead." The threat was palpable and the Chancellor knew he couldn't ignore it. He contacted the Rusk Roma director. He informed her that one of her members had broken the rules, shattered the ancient pact that had kept them in balance for centuries. The director responded calmly but firmly. "The Rusk Roma has no interest in war, but if one of its members deviates they must face the consequences." The Chancellor, now enraged, replied, "Then I will wipe the Rusk Roma off the face of the earth." But the director offered one last proposal. She would send someone capable of ending this without further bloodshed. Then she made a call. She expelled Eve from the Rosa Roma and summoned the only man who had never failed, John Wick, the Baba Yaga. She sent him directly to the Chancellor's door. Simultaneously, the Chancellor issued a decree. No one was to interfere. Anyone who tried would be exiled. Everyone was to stand aside and allow the wolf to hunt because this time the wolf was John Wick and the prey was Eve McCarroll. Shortly after John Wick came face to face with Eve, he offered her a choice: leave now and live or stay and die. Eve didn't even blink. She stayed. Wick, moved by her determination, spared her life not once but 3 times. Still, she refused to yield. Her thirst for revenge was too deep. She needed to avenge her father. Again. Wick defeated her. Again, he told her to leave, but then they both looked at the clock. Midnight was approaching, and if the job wasn't done, the price would be devastating. With a heavy heart, Wick backed away and let her go. Meanwhile, the Chancellor's eye reported, "Reactivate all emergency protocols." The Chancellor gave the order. Now every citizen was ordered to join the hunt for the intruder. Driven by rage, Eve broke into her enemies' homes, taking them down one by one without pause, without mercy. Finally, she broke into the armory where the deadliest weapons were kept. The news spread quickly. Everyone headed there to stop her. The Chancellor, aware that Eve was coming for him and Ella, issued one last order. "Kill her now." And then chaos. A massacre erupted. Eve, completely unleashed, tore through the crowd shooting, throwing grenades with flames rising in her wake, but there was still one man standing, the Chancellor's most loyal warrior, the last barrier between Eve and her objective. They faced each other in a savage duel, bullets crossing. Amidst the roaring flames in the midst of the chaos, Eve disappeared into the smoke, once again driven by a single obsession to survive and finish what she had started. She looked at her compass, hands steady, absolute concentration. Without hesitation, she activated her flamethrower. At the same time at headquarters someone warned the Chancellor, "We should hide your best warrior," but he refused, unyielding. No true leader runs. A leader stays and fights. Then another alert. John Wick has disappeared. They have completely lost his trail. Shortly after, Isla was seen being taken against her will. Meanwhile, Eve and the Chancellor's enforcer, his most loyal warrior, faced each other in a final battle. He unleashed his flamethrower. She countered with a high-pressure stream of water. Neither of them backed down, but Eve ran out of space, cornered with no escape. The leader raised his weapon to finish her, and then crack. A single accurate shot ripped through the air. The flamethrower exploded in his hands. John Wick, positioned as a sniper, had just saved her. It was 11:56 p.m., and the rule was clear. He could only kill Eve before midnight. No one else. Due to that shot, his position was exposed. Now every citizen brave enough to face him was about to meet John Wick. As chaos erupted, Eve did everything she could to buy time. Meanwhile, the Chancellor fled, speeding away with Ella in the car, but he didn't get far. Eve intercepted him, forcing the vehicle to stop. Face to face. The Chancellor smiled with cold arrogance. He told her that nothing would change. The village would continue to function. The system of raising children for the cult would endure for generations, but Eve, tired of empty promises and hollow speeches, without hesitation, Eve pulled the trigger. The Chancellor fell dead. Eve approached the car, gently lifted Ella and took her away. Moments later, John Wick radioed the Rose Garoma director, his voice calm and grave. "Done, he's dead." Sometime later, against all odds, Daniel was revealed to be alive, but the peace did not last long. Winston Scott pulled Eve aside. He gave her a final warning. "You may have cut off the head, but the body is still moving, and they are coming." In the final scene, Eve sat in the shadows of a grand theater watching the solemn Russo Roma ballet unfold before her. Then a message arrived. A global order had just been issued. They were looking for Eve Macaro, the bounty $5 million, and so the story ended, or perhaps it had just begun. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.